guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, Greg and I are doing an off topic. It's exciting. We love this one. This is our goal cards for 2025. So Greg, welcome back.
Thanks, buddy. We did the video that posted recently about how we did in 2024, and now we're looking into 2025. And I can honestly say it was harder for me to come up with a list this year than last year, but I have more cards this year than I had last year. So I don't know how that works, but it's getting harder to narrow down a list to share.
So I had the same problem. I guess when we see my list, you'll see. Last year we did 3 tiers of 5 cards, and this year I have 3 tiers. But you guys will see. In case anybody didn't watch the last video, I'm on a business trip this week, so I'm in a hotel. That's why my background's different.
We'll take you anywhere we can get you, bud.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So you want to go ahead? We'll jump into it. We'll pull up
Sure.
the
And I'd love to talk about some philosophical things about making goals and sticking to goals and all that. But let's go through our targets and then we'll see where we're at and we'll see how deep into the weeds we want to go.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll do this first. That way, this is the stuff people want to see, and then if they want to stick around and hear how we think about stuff, then they can.
There you go.
All right.
So we did 3 tiers, and last year we did 3 tiers of 5, and this year I still did 3 tiers of 5. Yours changed a little bit. We'll get to you in a second. So my third tier, I had the 48 Bowman Sammy Baugh. Now, Sammy Baugh also has a 48-49 Leaf, but being a 49, it's really his real rookie card is the 48 Bowman. A modern card. I've got a couple of newer cards on here. So the 2013 Bowman Chrome Refractor, Aaron Judge. Now we're starting to get into refractors and swirly balls and blues and pinks and taco fractors and stuff, but
Kaboomies.
This is just the regular refractor. Now this card, I've had this card. I had this card in a PSA 10.
Oh wow!
And a couple of years ago, when he was going for the whole home run, record, the 62 home runs. It got so expensive, I had to sell it. It was like 3 times what I bought it for, and at the time, I was just like, I don't know. It just seemed like I needed to sell it, so I sold it, and I didn't need a 10, so I'd like to pick up a 9. Because I want a nice one, and I can't tell the difference between a 9 and a 10. I probably couldn't tell the difference between an 8 and a 10 in some cases, but I want a centered 9 of that Bowman Chrome Refractor Aaron Judge. Then in the middle there, the 1950 Bowman, another football card, Marion Motley. There were really 3 guys that broke the color barrier in football before the barrier was broken in baseball, and this is Marion Motley's first card. The guy was a total beast, and I don't think those guys get nearly the attention that they should, and he was a very, very good player. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's from Canton, Ohio.
Oh, nice.
And so I think in Canton, by the Hall of Fame, there's a statue of him. And I don't know if it's because of what he did or if he's from Canton or a combination of the two, but I'm pretty sure in Canton there's a statue of him.
Nice.
And so that's his first card, which I think is a very cool card. And then I got the T206 Eddie Collins. I'm skipping one for a second. I'll come back. The T206 Eddie Collins, that was on my list last year. I've been looking for it, right card, right price, right grade, and I haven't found it yet, and I still want it, so that one sticks around. And then, something I don't talk about very often is I really like non-sport cards, and I've gotten a little bit deeper into non-sport cards, and there's probably about 15 non-sport cards I could have put in this spot. One of them is the 77 Topps Luke Skywalker, the number one, the first Star Wars card. And I don't know. There's just I've been on this nostalgia kick. I recently got a Griffey Upper Deck finally. I got the Don Mattingly 84 Donruss finally. And I'm just on this nostalgia tear. And I'm like, I want one of those. So the problem is the paper quality that they used on those cards is just awful.
Mm-hmm.
It's like paper towel, and the centering is awful, and there's fish eyes all over them. So it's really hard to get one in like a high grade, like a nice one. So I just want a centered one with decent corners. So, and as I look at it, I mean, I'm kind of showing off my variety a little bit. I got some
Oh yeah,
pre-war, I got some football, I got some modern baseball, and I got some Luke Skywalker. So,
there you go.
you know,
It's a nice
I'm just
combo.
showing off my variety.
There you go.
So let's look at yours, and then you can explain why your list looks different than mine.
All right, so I changed it up this year. I'm in a spot, and I think Greg might have mentioned this at the end of our last video, where he's got a lot more cards and his list is getting bigger. I'm kind of having the opposite. I picked up a bunch of cards this year, and I the cards that I really want are starting to shrink, so I need to start expanding my horizon. So because of that, I have 3 tiers of 3 cards this year instead of tiers of 5 cards. But
But
don't
each of the
worry.
but your third tier are big cards. So it's
Yeah.
almost like 9 big cards instead of
In
3.
fairness, yeah, that is true. That is
Yeah.
true. And I think the other thing too is um I, I know I'm gonna change some stuff up. You know,
You?
by Feb.
You
I know
think you
it's
might
weird.
change
It's hard.
stuff up?
It's hard to believe. I'm going to probably change stuff up by like February. So I figured this was a good baseline. So what I wanted to try to avoid that I did last year is pull a bunch of cards and then end up going like about half.
Mhm.
What I wanted to do this year is show all cards that I think I'm likely going to get. That way, if I put in 15, then I probably wouldn't. I'd probably end up not getting them all. Put in 9, I think I have a better shot of it.
Yeah.
So on this list, my tier two of these cards actually
Well, read the
were.
list for people that are just listening.
Oh, sure, good point. 1954 Red Heart Mickey Mantle, 1921 E121 Ty Cobb, and a T205 Gold Border Christy Mathewson. So 1911. Um, 2 of those were on my list last year, the Mickey Mantle and the Christy Mathewson. So those carried over from last year because I didn't pick them up, and I do really like those cards a lot. And I added the Cobb because I've been recently kind of on a Cobb kick. I read Charles Learson's book, and I kind of hold him in a different regard now, and I'm kind of enjoying picking up his stuff because his stuff, he has an interesting like range of cards, right? Like he has stuff. He has a few cards like pre T206, and then he has cards up into the early 1920s, and a lot of the kind of more obscure, rarer sets included him. So he's got all these kind of cool candy cards and whatnot. And because he was the best player at the time, um, a lot of the sets he has multiple issues in the same set, right? So I just think it's kind of fun to just pick up some interesting Cobbs. I think if I try to do what I did with the DiMaggios though, and say I'm going to do a Cobb run, I would lose my mind and go broke. So um, rather than do that, I'm just going to kind of pick up some random ones uh, over time and start to just kind of build on that a little bit. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I have that one, and then obviously, like I said, the other 2 are carryovers from last year that I just really like, but didn't really align with my goals last year.
Yeah. All 3 very cool cards.
Thank you.
No doubt that the 2 that you didn't pick up the previous year carrying over makes a lot of sense, because 2 of the cooler looking cards ever
Mm,
are the 54 Red Heart Mantle and the T206 Christy Matthews, and they're both very cool looking cards.
Yeah, I agree. Great images.
All right, so for me, I've got 3 carryovers on my second tier. So the carryovers are the 72 Topps Julius Erving, the Dr. J rookie card, the 55 Topps Sandy Koufax, which is his rookie card, and then the 33 Gaudy Mel Ott with the green background. Those 3 are cards that I wanted last year as well, but didn't get. The I would say of those 3, the Ott was the one I was searching for the most. It's the one that I'm most eager to acquire. And then adding to the list are the 1956 Topps Jackie Robinson, which I love that card. It's similar to the 55, which I got last year. And every Jackie Robinson card is a special card. And then the T206 Willie Keeler, which I'm a big Willie Keeler guy. I have his portrait. And when I got his portrait, I was kind of like, okay, I have one of his T206 cards. But then the more I see the quote unquote action one, the more I like it. And it's funny because I've always liked that card. And then we were having breakfast at the National, and your dad was there and your brother was there, and we were talking about Willie Keeler, and we were talking about that card, and he goes, yeah, one of the coolest parts is how he's got his glove tucked into his back pocket. And it had never really in my mind, like I knew that was there, but in my mind it never really clicked of, oh yeah, he's got his glove in his back. Like that is just such an era thing,
Right.
and
Right.
and now every time I see the card, it's the first thing I see. I completely changed the lens that I see the card from. I love how he's so choked up on the back because he's just a slap hitter. He's just to put it in play, try to hit it to where, there's the hole, and hit them where they ain't, bunter, all that. So I'd love to pick up any of these 5. I can't go wrong. I like the looks of all of them. I think they're all iconic cards, and I'm hopeful that I'll check a couple of these off. So
Nice. Yeah, I think one of the things that that kind of goes through my head when I make a list of cards, because I think my Red Heart, that was on my list, my personal list 2 years ago. It was on our list last year. It's on my list this year. Let me ask you, like when you have a card like say the Dr. J or the Koufax, because the odd I think for you is a little different, but for like the Dr. J or the Koufax, if you have a card on the list and it makes the list and you don't buy it, and then you make the list the next year, and let's say you don't pick one up this year because you get other stuff, as it stays on the list longer, does it become less and less of a kind of demand for you, or is it like because it's almost like, hey, something new caught my attention, so it's going on the list, but this is like the old faithful, it'll be there, and someday maybe I'll get it.
I think that's a really good point. Um, I think part of it though goes beyond what you just said. I mean, I do think that sort of like the 54 Ernie Banks, that I wanted for 35 years. It's like, well, I'll want it again next year. It's not that big a deal. I've gone this long without it. What's
Right.
going a little longer without it? But for me, it also, I think, is how frequently do I see the card? Like, I will go to a local card show, and there will be a Dr. J rookie in the room, and there will be a Sandy Koufax rookie in the room. But there probably won't be a 33 Gaudy Melot. There probably won't be a T206 Willie Keeler. There
Mm-hmm.
might be a 56 Jackie, but that's
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in between. If we go back up to your list right here, of those 3 cards, the 54 Red Heart Mantle, the E121 Ty Cobb, and the T205 Christy Mathewson, the one most likely to be in the room is probably the Mantle,
Yeah.
and so because of that, you don't feel like this sense of urgency when one comes up. You don't go, I got to get this one, because if I don't get this one, to find another one that meets my eye appeal and my expectations and what I want, it could be a long time until it comes up again.
That's a good
I have
point.
no doubt there are 5 Dr. J rookies that meet my eye test on eBay right now. So because of that, I'm not eager to go get it, because the supply is big enough that it doesn't make me feel any sense of urgency.
Mm. That makes sense.
Speaking of three cards you don't see very often, but are all gorgeous, tell us your second tier list.
So second tier, again, kind of going back what I said on the last one about Cobb. I just am kind of on a little bit of a Cobb kick. So I like the E90-1. So just a caveat, a lot of Cobb's cards that are like the candy issues, especially like from 1909 to like 1912, 13, 14-ish. A lot of those are just very, very rare. And his tobacco cards as well. They're just very rare. They're tougher to find. So I was looking at some cards of his that are a little easier to find. Like if I go on eBay, I'll see a few. If I go to a show, I'll probably see a few. So I went with the E90-1. I think it's a really cool image. I dig the burning sky look behind them. The Cy Young from the same set. He has two cards. One's Cleveland, one's Boston. I like the Boston one. I think it looks a lot better. I've actually liked this card a lot from before I even got on YouTube. This was a card that I'd seen, and I said, oh, I really need to get one. But Cy Young isn't as high a priority as some of the other players I was wanting to collect. And then this card, from when I first started looking at it 5 years ago to now, yeah, I regret not picking one up just because they got a little pricey.
And then
The third one,
tell people listening what the third card is.
the third one is the 36 R312 Joe DiMaggio. It's like a pastel looking image of Joe DiMaggio swinging with a facsimile signature on it. This is to me is an interesting card because I did my DiMaggio run, and his 38 Gaudi is his first kind of US issue card. He's got the Worldwide Gum from 1936, and he's got the Zenot. I think both of those are Canadian. But this one, the R312, this is from 36. So if we're saying that the 36 Worldwide Gum is his rookie, then this is sort of like another rookie card of his. This one's a color version versus
It's
the
not a standard size though, right?
no,
Isn't it like
it's
a bigger
bigger. Yeah, it's
card?
bigger.
Yeah.
It's like it's not the exact, but it's more like the size of an exhibit card. It's more of a square though. It's not a rectangle. Well, it's a rectangle, but it's more square shaped than rectangular shape
There's
compared to like.
actually a pretty decent one on eBay right now.
Nice. How much is it?
Yeah. It wasn't crazy expensive.
Okay.
So
So
not trying to spend your money, but
no,
the year hasn't even started yet. I mean, you got, a couple of weeks, but
that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I'm not buying it
that
yet. I can't. I made a deal with
that
my wife. Nothing else this year. Anything else I get, I'm buying at least in January.
okay. The E90-1 Ty Cobb is to me a really, really cool image. I I saw one of those in a 1.5 at the National, and for a couple of hours, I was considering pulling the ripcord on all my plans and buying it because it was a really nice looking one. And I just think that that's such a cool image of him. Let me
Mm-hmm.
ask you something about that Cy Young, the E90-1 Cy Young. Does it matter to you much at all buying a card of a player like a Cy Young in a uniform on a team different than kind of what they're most known for, or does
It
that is
doesn't.
that doesn't
It
bother you?
doesn't bug me. No, not really. I mean, I buy the card of the player, and I think the reason that I like this one is less because it's a Cy Young card, and I just really like the image on it. I think first, I don't know why. I just think that's a really cool image of him with the like
Well,
basically
it's
the old
basically
fashioned
the
jersey.
same image as his T206, right?
No, so this is the same image as his Bryce Williams.
Okay. The angle of his head and stuff looks super. Maybe it's the other direction.
Yeah, so his T206, his body takes up a little bit more of the card, so it's more of
Yeah.
his head. So his head's
Yeah.
bigger and like
Yeah.
it doesn't go as far down. Like this goes down to like his
It's a
stomach
tighter
almost.
shot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tighter shot, and he's got the Cleveland jersey on.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a look at my top goal
Oh yeah, see
targets.
there.
There it is. Yeah, it is pointing the same. It's
Same way. Yeah.
similar. Anyway, okay. So my top goal for the year, the 53 tops Jackie Robinson, the T206 Cy Young, the portrait, the 33 Gaudi Bobby Jones, the Sport Kings, which is a holdover from last year, the T206 Ty Cobb red background. And I have a goof right here. I didn't change that. Oop, that shouldn't say that. So this is from there was a set that was produced by Duke Tobacco that are called the Great American Set.
Yep.
And this is the Abraham Lincoln. And I love the set. And there's an amazing Thomas Edison card, amazing Ben Franklin card, amazing George Washington, an amazing Edgar Allan Poe card. It is sort of like the 52 tops or the T206s of non-sport.
Mm-hmm.
And the Thomas Edison's probably the most expensive card. This is the Abe Lincoln. Several guys we know have one of these. Andrew Nuff Said Cards has one of these. Mookie recently bought one of these.
Oh, nice.
Ryan Nolan has this. It's just a really special card, and I put that as kind of a placeholder of I'd really like to get one of the big 5 or 6 from this set. So it doesn't have to be the Abe Lincoln. It could be the Ben Franklin. It could be the Thomas Edison's really expensive. It could be the Edgar Allan Poe. It could be Thomas Jefferson. There are some big ones, and I just love the set so much. And again, like I mentioned earlier, I really like non-sport cards a lot. And I think that, a lot of people say, well, after you go pre-war, then what? And it's like, well, you could go pre-century, or you could go non-sport.
Right.
And I think that a lot of the non-sport cards are, they seem to be gaining some momentum, but I personally like them.
That's a
So
cool. Yeah, that's a great set. What year is that set again?
it's 1888 or 89.
Okay, so that's actually that's a pretty important set then, right? Because that's the time
Very important set.
when Duke Tobacco was building their monopoly, and that's around the time they were trying to buy Allen and Ginter.
It's
And
the N76 Great American Set by Duke, and it is 1888. So I mean, it is the set from non-sport pre-turn of the century. It is the set.
I think Duke actually made that set because they were trying. So Duke was known as Duke was a very fierce competitor, right? And when he was trying to acquire Allen and Ginter, and they said they wouldn't sell, he basically said, and this is back in the 1880s. He goes, I make $400,000 a month. I'm going to spend all of it on marketing against you. And then I think that's when he created this set. So he actually created this set to, help market his stuff, to drive down the demand for Allen and Ginter tobacco products so he could acquire them. And we know the set of obviously the 1888 Allen and Ginter set, amazing set as well, right? And it's just interesting that's when that came out.
Yeah, they had a few sets that and it was an incredible time for non-sport tobacco cards that were happening in 1880, 1889. I would say for me, if I somehow could get 2 cards off of this screen by the end of the year, I would consider the whole year a success.
Yeah, those are all awesome cards.
I really would like to get the Cy Young and the Ty Cobb. Both are very pricey. The Bobby Jones, unless it's a 1, is very expensive. I mean that Abe Lincoln in a 1 is $1,000. So
wow.
Yeah, they're all expensive cards for my budget, but I really would like to get a Ty Cobb this year. I'd really like to get a Cy Young. Those are probably my 1A and 1B
Nice.
that I would like to get, but we'll see what happens. I don't know.
Nice.
We'll see. All right, and then your top list is the 1933 Gaudi 144 Babe Ruth, the 52 Topps Willie Mays, and the T206 Bat on Shoulder Ty Cobb.
Yep. So the reason I have those on there, I've got, well, obviously I love all three of those cards. I've wanted that maze for a long time. There were other cards though that I prioritized above it, and I think at this point I'm getting closer to having that one prioritized up there. I have the yellow Gaudi number 53, and I've got the green one number 181. The red is just like the yellow is just the red background. So I figured if I picked up this one, I kind of have all three images used in the 33 Gaudi set. I obviously wouldn't have all four of the cards, but have all three of like the Ruth images. And then the Cobb, like I had mentioned on the last two tiers, right? Cobb is somebody I'm collecting this year, or I want to collect more of next year. But I've got the bat off shoulder, the green and the red, so this would kind of complete the rainbow of the Cobbs from the T206 set for me.
Now, you don't have a lot of Willie Mays cards, do you?
No, I only have his rookie card.
Yeah, which is interesting because you've got a lot of stuff and a lot of big stuff, but the fact that you only have one Willie Mays card that's interesting to me. This is obviously the next card.
Mm-hmm.
Does the 52 top sell? I don't know. I'm not in that market. What sells for more, the 52 tops or the Bowman in an equal grade? Are they about the same, or is the tops more?
No, in the same grade, I think the Bowman's actually more.
Okay.
You mean it's 51, but his rookie card?
Yeah.
Yeah, his rookie card's more than the 52 tops. Well, it depends. You know how it works, right? Like in the grades I look at, like I don't know, like for this card, I would say like a 4 or a 5. His rookie's more than the tops in a 4 or 5. But I think as you get up into like the upper middle grades, right, like a 7, I think this is more than the Bowman. But then you go above that to like the, you know, the where the air is rarefied, right?
Yeah.
Like both of these, like in a 7, like an 8 or a 9. I think the Bowman passes it again.
So it's pretty comparable then. Whereas with the mantle sells for more in the tops than the Bowman.
Across the board, yeah.
Yeah, but these two, it kind of is close at least,
Yeah.
which is interesting. Um, Here, why don't you pull this off the screen and let's just kind of talk about. So you seem to be, from what you did in 2024 and what you're talking about so far with 2025, it seems to me like you kind of get on player kicks and then you go down that player kick. In 2024 was a DiMaggio, Garrick, Jackie player kick, and it's sounding like you're leaning down the Cobb road for 2025. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I started leaning down the Cobb Road in it's a recent thing, but yeah, I read that book in September, or I guess I read the book in August, and then in September I started picking up Cobbs, right? So I picked up the green one, the
Yeah.
green T206, and then I picked up the E98 anonymous
Yeah.
orange background,
Yeah.
and then the bat off shoulder recently. So I'm kind of
Now,
it's my thing now is Cobb.
now, in addition to now, Cobb has, like you had mentioned earlier, he has a lot of cards, so you could go a whole year focused on him. Is there another player that this year you think is gonna be involved in the 2025 pickups? Like, is there another player on the horizon that a run might be starting or going to expand?
Other than Cobb, I don't know. I don't think so. But again, I changed my mind too much. But I do. I would like to pick up some Ruths.
Hmm.
Um, I've got the two Gaudis and then the Sinella. I would like to pick up some other Ruths, maybe like an American Caramel, um, or something. Again, though, the problem's probably not the right word. The difficulty with Ruth is he's more expensive than anybody else to do like any sort of like getting one playing days Ruth card in a year is like humongous, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
So it's not like I could say, oh yeah, I want to pick up like the E120, the E121. I want to get like a Collins McCarthy and a couple others. Right? It's like, okay, cool. Well, that would blow my budget for the next 20 years, right? So
right.
for me, I wouldn't say like he would be somebody I'd go on a run of, but maybe I'd pick up, like I said, I like the Gaudi, the 144, the swinging pose, and then maybe if I have budget later in the year, one other one maybe from like maybe a caramel or something. But I think from like a player run where I want to pick up like multiple cards of the player, like more than two, I think Cobb is probably the one I want to go after this year. And it, I don't know, it's kind of weird to say, but compared to like DiMaggio or Jackie Robinson, Cobb is a tougher one, right? There's
Yeah.
a lot more cards for him than those guys had, and his cards are on average quite a bit more expensive. So,
Now, have you ever, and I think I've asked you this off camera. I don't know if we've talked about it so much in one of our videos, but have you thought much about doing cards outside of baseball cards?
mhm. I actually, when I was working on the list, I had a couple they're sports cards, but they're non baseball that I considered. But the problem is, my passion is around baseball cards. So, like, if I were to say, hey, it'd be really cool to get like a Wilt Chamberlain rookie card, I'd get it and I'd really like it probably for like a couple weeks, maybe a month. But then I would look at it and say, oh man, for what I paid for that, I could have got, like an E98 Cobb in a red or and I don't want to do that, right? Like, I don't want to buy a nice card that's a great card and then say, well, I could have had this instead. So for me, I think I'm going to focus on baseball probably for the foreseeable future. But yes, at some point, I definitely want to start picking up non-baseball. It just for now, there's enough baseball cards that I still really want that I'd prefer over a non-baseball. But yeah, like I would love to have a Chamberlain rookie, a Bill Russell rookie. I'd love to have a Gretzky rookie. Uh, I don't know who else. Bobby Orr rookie would be cool. Um, Jim Brown rookie that you've got.
Yeah.
It's an awesome card. Um, Honestly, it'd be sweet to get like a Bronco Nagurski,
Oh yeah.
but
Oh yeah.
like those cards are awesome. I really really do like those cards. I just right now I'm more focused on baseball, but like
Yeah.
long term, I definitely see some of those cards coming into the collection someday.
Now, I know that you've sold some smaller, very peripheral cards, and we've talked about how, you sent me a few that I put out at shows and I've sold a few for you and stuff. Is there Are there any cards that are in your collection at your house or in your safe deposit box where you've thought recently, do I really want to have this? And I'll just make up a couple of cards. Roberto Clemente and Sandy Koufax rookie. I think I want to cash these out and go after this Cobb that I really want. Do you ever? Because a lot of people don't move out of cards once they move into them. And one of the guys that we've talked about, and in fact we just talked about a minute ago, is Andrew Nuff Said Cards. I feel like he does a really good job of using what he has to move into things he wants more and building his collection. Like it's sort of like buying the starter house and then moving up to an intermediate house and then moving up to like a forever house. Do you ever consider doing that? Do you have any cards that as part of your planning you've thought about doing that?
Not really as part of my planning. There, I do have people that will hit me up every once in a while asking if I would sell a card to them,
Oh,
and usually I say no. I did have somebody email me recently about my 48 Bowman Warren Spawn. Um, I have that one in a 5, and he made a good point of I've got the Barra in the 6, so why don't I sell him my 5 and then go buy a 6? But I mean, for example, I told him, I said, look, if you want that card, I'll sell it to you. But there's not a ton that um, I would be open to selling. I would say if you watch my top 100 cards in my collection, I would be very hesitant to sell any. I wouldn't sell anything I think in my top 50, and I'd be pretty hesitant to sell most of the stuff in my 100 to 51 video.
So you wouldn't want to sell your 51 to 100 cards and then make your 1 to 50 cards that much better? Like that's not interesting to you to kind of
Um,
consolidate like that?
Not yet, because I don't know. So a friend of ours, Dave, he had a collection, right? And he knew what cards he truly loved from that collection, and he sold his collection and sold some of the a couple like monster cards, right? And
Monster.
and then he used that money to take the cards that he really liked from his collection and upgrade all of them to like incredibly high grades, right? Like pretty
Yeah.
much sevens and eights, right?
Yeah.
A couple eight and a halves of like the most iconic cards in the hobby, right? But I like that idea. The problem is right now, like I literally just as like a something to do, I think on Saturday morning when everybody was sleeping in, I created a spreadsheet of all the best cards in my collection that are my favorite cards. So most of them are on my top 100, but some of them aren't, but they're just still like my favorite cards. And said, if I were to sell a bunch of stuff, which of those cards would I purchase and like a perfect looking one of? And as I started building it out, I'm like, okay, basically, I would if I sold my top 100 cards, I would buy like 80 of them back in higher grades, which doesn't work, right? So I'm
Yeah.
not there yet, right? I don't know. I haven't. I can't. I don't have all the cards I want. So until I have all the cards I really want, I can't really say what card where I would want to like consolidate and then like take the cards up a level. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to narrow it down enough yet.
Um Last year at this time when we were talking about our goal for 2024, one of the things we both talked about was staying more focused and making a list and sticking to the list. And I think that to us and then a couple months later you said we were talking in one of these and you said I've decided that lists are a bad idea, and you decided that lists almost restricted you. And uh, what is the goal as far as staying focused this year for you? I mean, do you make a list? Because I mean, I'll just say, I mean, right now, like I said a second ago, if I could get the Cy Young portrait and the Ty Cobb red portrait this year. If I just left at the end of the year, if I just had those two cards, nice looking examples of both those cards, I would feel like 2025 was a complete success. If I just picked
Hmm.
up those two cards,
Yeah.
but I know that I'm going to be spending money on all of some other things that come up along the way, which will prohibit me from being able to have as much to get a nice copy of those two cards.
Sure.
So so what is it you're going to do this year to try to stay more focused on the cards that you want most instead of getting distracted along the way? Is there something that we can do? Is there something you can enlighten me on?
So what I did last year, we had the goal card video at the end of the year last year, and then I guess it was like on New Year's actually, and about 3 weeks later, I changed it. Right, I came up with my one
Your
card a month for
your
12 month
list
plan.
your
Yes,
list plan listed lasted 3 weeks.
yes, it did. It didn't last very long, but some of the cards from that
I
transferred to
love
my
you,
one a
Darren.
month. Not a lot, but I mean maybe a quarter of them. But I liked that plan. The like one, I pick the cards I really want, one a month for 12 months. It helps me budget. It helps me plan. It allows me to say, okay, my income fluctuates. So, I'll put some of the big cards further out when I know that, it'll be like a good month versus, you know, some of the less expensive ones in months that, I won't have as much commission. So that was kind of taking that approach. I kind of like that. So what I did this year with the other video, that we did in this video, the 9 cards that I showed, if I focus on picking those 9 cards up, if there's stuff that pops up that I want in addition to that, I could kind of put that in there. If I did a list of 15 cards, then it'd be harder to pick up those random ones that are outside of the list. So I figured if
Right.
I made a smaller list, it gives me a little bit more flexibility to deviate from the list and
So
still get
last
everything.
year, so in the video that we did the other day, that we uh we looked at last year's goals and what you picked up. You got 10 out of the 15 cards. 10 out of the 15 cards that you said you wanted, you picked up. And then you picked up a bunch of other really cool stuff. Of the 9 cards that we just went over, how many of those 9, if we're predicting and we come back in the end of 2025, December of 2025, how many of those 9 cards will you now own?
Um, hmm, 4.
Okay. I think if you ended up with 4 of those cards, that'd be a pretty good year.
I think that if I were to prioritize them, so the tiers weren't tiers of priority, they're tiers based on price.
Okay.
So if I were to prioritize them, I'd say, um, again, some are more expensive than others. So like when I get them might not be the same as like how high they are a priority just because of like, cash. But the 33 Gaddy Ruth, the T206 Cobb, bat on shoulder, the E90 Cobb, and the T205 goal border Chrissy Mathewson. Those are
Hmm.
the 4 cards that I think if I had to prioritize the 9, those are the 4 that I would most likely go after.
Okay.
Um, but who knows, right? Who knows how the year turns out and how things go, and maybe I could prioritize 9. I don't know. But yeah, I think if I were to to be honest with you, if I got just the Gowdy Ruth and the Combat on shoulder, um, I would feel like I mean, that would still be a pretty solid year worth of cards.
Yeah.
Neither one of those are cheap.
Do you think that are there any of these cards that you listed of the 9 that aren't cards that you would really search for that seriously on eBay and you'd search more for in person at like a Strongsville or the National or something? Or are they cards that you have like, will you have a saved search on all 9 on eBay? And when, the REA auctions pop up, you'll look for those 9. Or are there some that you're more inclined to buy in person than through an auction?
Yeah, I think the American Caramel Cobb. I think I would prefer to do that one at a show because I gave that specific example, but he has a bunch of caramel cards that are, he has the early caramel cards that are, the lithographs, and he has the newer caramel, they're 100 and something years old, but the newer ones that are like photographs. Um, when we were at Strongsville last year, there were a lot of the different examples of those Cobb like photograph caramel cards, right? There was,
Yeah.
he had, I saw the M1015, multiple different backs on that one. I saw the 1921 and 22 American caramels, different versions of those. Um, I think I even saw, I think I saw a Collins McCarthy Cobb as well. So there were a bunch of different ones. And so the example I gave on this is one that I like. But if I go to the show and I see a bunch of different ones, and I probably pick, you know, from them there. So That Cobb specifically, I think I would want to get at Strongsville. I wouldn't want to go for that at the National. The only reason I say that is there's going to be so many spread out across such a big area that becomes more of a pain in the butt to just kind of, you know, narrow it down versus
Yeah.
Strongsville. I could walk like 4 loops around the ice rink and be like, okay, I've seen them all 4 times. I know which one I want to do. So
How
that one,
helpful how helpful is it for you, and be honest, it might not be helpful at all, but at Strongsville, when there's a card that you're thinking at, that you have a second and 30 sets of eyes of people that you can ask, does that matter much to you? Is that helpful to go, hey, I know it's Strongsville, I'll be able to get a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh opinion by just waving my friends down that are an aisle over, or hey, grab them and bring them over and look at the card. Or do you kind of just, nah, that's nice, but you really just rely on your own set of eyes?
no, I rely on a lot of people, right? Like that's what I really liked about Strongsville, right? I almost bought 2 cards that I would have probably regret buying. One I would have paid way too much for because I thought it was more valuable because to me it's rare. Like to me, if there's less than like 50 examples of a card, I think that's like insanely rare.
Hmm.
And then some of the guys there that I asked advice from, they're like, "Oh, that one's super common. There's like 26 of those." Right.
Right.
And I'm like,
Right.
huh? All right. But
Yeah.
they were able to like say, look, you don't see that back. For example, there's a Cobb, it was M1015 Cobb with it was a clothing company back. It's I thought that was I'm like, oh my God, like they had it displayed with the back up, right? It didn't even have the Cobb up. It was the back up, and there was a little card next to it that says this is a Ty Cobb, right? So I'm like, oh, that
Yeah.
must be a crazy rare back. Like I've never seen one before. And they were asking a lot for it, but I said, oh, it's probably a good deal because it's so rare. And then uh, Dave Blue Jacket 66 saw it, and he said, like the lady turned around and he's like, no, no, no. He's like, that's not. He goes, he's like, it's not common, but it's not rare, especially at
Yeah.
that price point. So then I walked away, right? And then there's a couple other cards I was looking at that I'm like, oh, those are good cards. It's an older card. It's hard to find them in really good shape. They look pretty good. And then I asked Andrew to look at one. He's like, he walked over, looked at it, and I met up with him like a couple of tables down. He's like, no, don't buy that, right? So, you know, on some of the older rare stuff, yeah, like those guys, right? Like, um, our buddy David, he gave me advice on a couple cards. Obviously, you and Petty's input on just like what do you think? How does this card look compared to these other ones? Grade wise, eye appeal. Definitely want your guys' input. So yeah, to me, Strongsville in the national, but to a lesser extent because we're not all together. Um, it is beneficial, right? But then there's other cards, right? Like if I'm going to buy the 52 tops maze, you know, I feel like I could figure that one out on my own.
Yeah. No, yeah, I get it. And it's interesting how you have a plan, and we all have a plan, and we all think, okay, what am I going to do differently this year? And then whether we fall back on old habits, whether we stick to this list, some of my favorite pickups over this last year were cards that just kind of fell on my lap. And I'm like, I wasn't expecting to fall in love with that particular copy of that particular card, but I did. And
Mhm.
I'm glad that I did. So there's a difference between being too open minded and being too narrow minded. If you're so focused on just a few things, you might be missing out on a bunch of opportunities. But if you're too open minded, then you may never end up getting to the particular cards that you want most. So that's the
Yeah,
part that I struggle with, is like, I don't want to just close my eyes and say, I'm going to wait until, you know, I have this much money, because you might be missing out.
I agree. So I feel like last year, I know I joke about like my lists and what did Petty call it? The regenerating lists and
Right.
change of this and that list one, list two. I joke about it, but I honestly think that last year I was probably the most focused I've been, right? I had specific cards, called them out. I might have had multiple lists, but I completed my when I came up with my final primary list for the year, I completed it early, created a new list, and went after cards on that list. So for me, last year was solid because I had cards on my list that kind of ranged, from medium to high, and I budgeted and planned for them specifically. Right, the year before that, I bought a I bought way more cards. Right, I probably bought, when I did my top 100 list this year, 17 cards were new. When I did it last year, there was like 38 cards that were new, and that I think was worse, right? Because I wasn't focused. I was focused to an extent, but it was like I want to just get all these cards because I want to get all these cards, and I got them, and now I don't. I love all the cards in my collection, but like I look at them and I'm like, okay, well, cool, 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 cool. Oh, this one I really want to look at this one,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I feel like when I like from the cards I got 2 years ago, a bunch of them I love to look at, but there's some that I'm like, I bought it, right? I bought it. I mean, and the other problem too that I had that year was I was doing my top 100 player videos, or sorry, top 50 players, right?
Hmm.
And I wanted to have a card for every player, and I kind of
Yeah.
focused on the rookie cards of the players. And some of those players, they were great players, but I don't have like I don't feel about their rookie cards the same way as I feel about other cards. But I bought them because I wanted them so I could make the videos. And
Hmm.
some of them I already had sent to you to sell, and other ones I don't even have. I have a couple different cases that I store stuff in at the house, and I have basically I've realized there's one that I open a lot, and then as I am less interested in the card, I put it in the other one. I don't open that one as often, right? So
But
um,
circling back to what I was asking earlier, so you would never dip into that case to liquidate to get funds to buy a 33 Gaudi 144 Babe Ruth?
no, I don't think so. I said no before. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I don't know. My thing is I don't like regrets, and I feel like I don't want to. If somebody's like, "Hey, do you have this card?" and I'll say, "Yeah." Wait, no, I used to. I feel like, oh, well, then at that point, when that happens, I'll say, oh, dang, I wish I still had it, right? So, I think, you know, unless I needed to, right? Like I probably wouldn't sell much. And that's the other problem too. The ones that I would be open potentially to selling, I'd have to sell like a whole bunch of them to even do like a small offset of what it would cost to get like the Gaddy Ruth.
But what about like your Jordan rookie? You'd
That's an
never
icon. That's such an iconic card that I probably wouldn't. I'll say this: if I was going to sell it, I would have sold it in 2021
Okay.
because it would have been 3 times as much as it's worth now, right? So, um,
But if
I
you're
probably
looking
would.
across the table at a sweet 144 Gaudi Babe Ruth, and the guy says I'll trade you for that Jordan, you wouldn't do that.
Oh, I would, because the Gaddy Ruth is in a two would be worth twice as much as my Jordan. So
Oh, it would? How much is your Jordan worth?
it's an eight. I think I had it at like, I can't remember when I did the countdown. I think I had it at like around 6 grand maybe,
Oh, okay. I thought it was more than that.
and the Gaddy Ruth is like around
15 or
nine
something? 12?
9,500, 10,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're approaching our hour mark, which is usually when they get the hook and yank us off stage. I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how this year plays out. I wish I had some sort of guiding light where I could just blindly walk toward it, and it would keep me like a lighthouse, that was out there in the distance that I could just steer toward that. But I don't,
You do.
and I
The
do I.
T206 red background Ty Cobb.
I would love to get one somewhere between a 1.5 and a 2.5 that has decent eye appeal, but uh, I just don't see myself being able to save up enough money to pull it off.
And that's the thing that's tough, right? When you have, if you limit the list and you stick to the list, it's easier to do that. Plus, we talked about last year, right? The card account and the goal account, right?
You know,
Change
but
your
sometimes,
percentage.
sometimes.
More goes in the
Sometimes
goal account.
recently, but Darren, recently I've dipped into the goal account a couple of times. I
Uh,
stole from the goal account on my Mordecai Brown T206, and I stole from my goal account on my Casey Stengel rookie card.
and
And
that's
they're
fine.
not
That's fine though.
really.
You could
It
steal
is
from your
fine. It is
you could
fine,
steal
but
from your goal account.
it's fine, but it's preventing me from getting the Cobb.
That's true. I mean, and that's the thing. So the other option too is to focus on your list, prioritize them by price, focus on like the 4 or 5 least expensive ones plus the cob.
What do kidneys go for nowadays? I have a spare.
You could probably get a cob for a kidney, I would guess. I don't know, but I would hope.
All
Look,
right, dude.
you could steal from your goal account all you want to buy other cards. The problem occurs is when you're like, hey, I stole from the kid's 529. Then it's like, okay, enough's enough.
Well, the problem is I've got a senior in high school and I've got a sophomore in college. So you can't steal from the 529 because it's the 529 time is now.
That's true. That's true. I'm with you. And that's the other thing too, right? Like budgetarily, there's stuff that we both want that we might not get, but in like 4 or 5 years, assuming the kids are off the payroll at that point, we'll have more disposable income and we could get them then, right? You don't have to get the biggest cards now, right? Like if you
Did you
can't
grow
get,
up watching the Cosby Show?
yeah,
You remember the old joke that Cliff Huxtable was like thinking he was finally going to have the kids out of the house and more were moving back in than we're moving out?
yeah,
I
that's true.
mean, it's just not going to happen.
Oh, you could
It's
hope.
gonna be a while, dude. It's gonna be a while, man.
True.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up. What are your parting words of advice for me and the fellow collectors who are gonna find every rabbit hole between here and their goal card in 2025? Last piece of advice.
The best part of a list is it could be rewritten.
That's not helpful. That sounds like Mike Petty. That guy's got too much in our ear right now.
That's true. No, I would say, look, like a list of 10 cards, there's no way you like all 10 the same.
Yeah.
Buy the one you want the most, right? If it's more expensive, save up for it. If it's one of the less expensive ones, get it sooner. But I would say if you end the year and say, hey, I bought out of the 10 cards on my list or the 15 cards on my list, I bought the 3 or 4 that I like the least, but that's how I budgeted it. You'd be happier if you just waited longer and bought one of the cards you liked more. Yes, exactly.
All right. I'll put this on my mirror.
There you go.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks as
I'll
always.
be
I
like your
always have
AA
fun.
guy. Every time you
What's
feel
that?
like buying a card this year, call me and I'll be like, no, you can't buy it.
Okay.
You're making such good progress. Don't buy it. You're doing
I have
great.
a feeling. I have a feeling you'll say, yeah, dude, you should totally get that.
Not if you don't want, if you tell me my goal is this card, I don't want to spend any money on anything else till I get this card, I will fully support that.
Okay. Let me think if that's what I want or not, and I'll get
Okay.
back to you.
You decide and let me know. All right,
All
everybody
right.
else, great collecting in 2025. And for those who have channels, I can't wait to see what everybody picks up this year. Thanks for watching, guys. Talk to you guys later.
Later.